rehab so many times, and every time he'd be doing great, you know, and then it would just fall back. I mean, you've heard the same story from a million people. And it got really, really bad. Apparently he, it wasn't heroin. He ended up getting some fentanyl. It killed him. Yeah.
For years, one member of the Harrison family remained a mystery to most Pawn Stars fans. While Pawn Stars turned the Harrisons into household names, one son stayed largely out of the spotlight, until a tragedy forced the family to confront a story they had kept private for years. After his death, new details began to emerge, and what was found among his belongings only deepened the questions surrounding his final years. So, what really happened to Adam Harrison? And why did those closest to him believe there was more to the story than anyone initially realized? Join us as we uncover the tragic story of Adam Harrison and the discoveries that raised even more questions. Garage secret stuns everyone. For years, Rick Harrison's son kept a garage that few people paid much attention to, and most assumed it contained nothing more than ordinary tools, old equipment, and forgotten belongings. However, everything changed after his death when the doors were finally opened, and what seemed like a routine inspection quickly turned into something nobody had expected. As friends, family members, and curious onlookers gathered to sort through the contents, they began discovering items that raised more questions than answers. The deeper they looked, the more surprising the findings became, and it soon became clear that this garage held far more than anyone had ever imagined. People have been pressing the family for more information, hoping it might provide them with closure. However, the family has remained tight-lipped, offering only secret leaks here and there. What started as a simple effort to clear out a garage soon became a shocking story that captured everyone's attention. As details continued to emerge, many were left wondering how such an extraordinary collection could have remained hidden for so long, and what it truly revealed about the man who left it behind. But as the family stayed quiet, people started guessing more and more, and even small details began to feel important. So the question became, is the garage hiding something the family still does not want to talk about? What they allegedly found. They didn't just find rusty lawnmowers and dusty holiday decorations. Word on the street is that they stumbled across a stash of personal junk that made it blindingly obvious this guy was drowning in some seriously heavy mental baggage. None of the local authorities have officially opened their mouths about what was actually in those boxes, but that hasn't stopped the internet from turning the whole messy situation into a massive true crime obsession. Supposedly, the stash included handwritten notes, half-finished projects, and random personal junk. People tracking the story immediately started guessing that Adam was secretly keeping a record of a life his own family knew absolutely nothing about. Other rumors claimed the garage was packed with old photos and random keepsakes. This naturally made everyone wonder if Adam was hoarding memories that actually meant something to him. As the internet got a hold of this, fans started digging for clues, hoping to finally solve the weird mysteries that defined his life. None of this stuff has been proven, but that has not stopped people from arguing about it online. Maybe the garage really did hold massive secrets, or maybe it was just a bunch of regular junk from a private life. Either way, the gossip just turned a tragic situation into an even bigger mystery. The son who stayed off camera. Adam Harrison was the second of Rick's sons, born to Rick and his first wife, Kim. To the family, he was never a brand or a character. He was just Adam, the brother in the middle, the one some loved ones called by the nickname Wax. He grew up around the same pawn counters that would later make his family famous, and by several accounts, he worked at the gold and silver shop in the years before the television cameras ever arrived. The family trade was in his blood as much as anyone's. When the show finally became a massive hit, Adam decided to back away instead of jumping into the spotlight. While Corey took on the big hoss persona and learned to play for the cameras, Adam stayed completely out of the picture. Die-hard fans of the show could easily name Rick, Corey, the old man, and Chum Lee, but a ton of them had absolutely no clue that a third Harrison son even existed. It is pretty impressive to watch a family turn a dusty junk shop into a multi-million-dollar reality TV empire, while one kid looks at the entire circus and just says, "No thanks, I will stay in the back." There are plenty of reasons a person might choose privacy over fame, and for a long time it looked like Adam simply preferred a normal life away from the spotlight. He had every right to it. Not everyone wants their face on cable television, and not every family member fits the loud, fast world of reality TV. On the surface, his absence read as a personal choice and nothing more. But there was more underneath, and the family knew it even when fans did not. While his father and brother were filming episodes and shaking hands with tourists, Adam was reportedly fighting a battle that had started years earlier and had nothing to do with cameras. It was a fight that would stretch across most of his adult life, and one that his father tried again and again to help him win. Because Adam never appeared on the show, the wider public had almost no picture of who he was as a person. There were no on-camera moments to quote, no famous catchphrases, no viral clips. He existed in the gaps between the episodes, known to the family and to the people who worked the counter, but invisible to the audience that loved his relatives. In a strange way, that invisibility protected the family's image for years, even as things grew harder behind closed doors. Because the truth was that Adam's struggle had begun long before the world ever heard his name, and it reached all the way back to his early 20s. A battle that started way too early. Rick was always upfront about when the problems actually kicked off. According to him, the struggle with his son's substance overuse started back when Adam was only about 20. Anyone who has dealt with a family member facing substance overuse knows exactly how this cycle goes. There were countless massive fights, the brutal screaming matches that happen when a parent is completely terrified for their kid. The father kept pushing, the son kept pushing back, and they both got completely trapped in a loop that neither one could escape. For a minute there, it actually looked like they might win the fight. Rick put his son into rehab more times than he could easily count, and each time there was a flash of hope. Adam would come out clean. He would look healthy. He would seem like himself again. Speaking later about those years, Rick remembered the cruel rhythm of it, saying that every time Adam went through treatment, he would be doing great, and then it would just fall back. The hope never lasted as long as the family needed it to. Behind those words is a level of exhaustion that only families dealing with severe dependency actually understand. Parents celebrate the good weeks. They start to believe this time things will finally stick. Then the floor drops out again, and everyone is right back at the beginning, just more tired and more terrified than before. Rick lived in that exact loop for years, watching his son disappear, come back, and disappear all over again. Holidays, birthdays, and random phone calls were basically a nightmare because nobody ever knew which version of Adam was going to show up. The family just kept praying that the next rehab stay would miraculously fix everything. That exact type of denial is the only reason people do not just pack up and leave, even after getting burned 1,000,000 times. It is wild how optimism makes people ram their heads into a brick wall over and over, genuinely believing the bricks will give way first. Then the last 6 months of Adam's life arrived, and everything that had been slowly unraveling for years suddenly came apart all at once. The last 6 months. Rick would later describe the final stretch as a really bad downward spiral, and the details that surfaced painted a grim picture. Fentanyl, the powerful synthetic opioid that has flooded the country, had taken hold of his son in a way the earlier years had not. Rick put it in heartbreaking terms, saying that fentanyl turned his son into someone he was not, and that it brought with it bad decisions and time spent in jail. Those bad decisions were real and serious. Reports drawn from an incident report indicated that Adam had been behind bars for months before the end, a sign of just how far things had slipped. When he got out, he moved into a guest house on a property in the Las Vegas area, and he had been living there for only about 2 weeks before his death. It was meant to be a fresh start, but the demons had followed him inside. What people nearby described in that short time was alarming. A woman who lived in an RV between the main house and the guest house told police that Adam had been acting strangely, including barricading himself inside by pushing furniture up against the doors. It was the behavior of a man in deep crisis, isolated and afraid, a world away from the easy family scenes that had once surrounded him. This was the part of the story the cameras never could have captured, and the part the public had no idea was happening. While Pawn Stars reruns played on televisions across the country, the quiet Harrison son sat alone in a guest house, barricaded in, fighting something that had chased him since he was barely an adult. What no one realized at the time was that this silence was not just unusual. It was the beginning of a moment that would change everything for the Harrison family. The morning everything stopped. Adam was last spotted on January 17, 2024. After that day, the door to his guest house just stayed completely shut. The woman who was renting out the main house started getting nervous when he ignored her repeated knocking. She eventually found a Facebook message where he claimed he was sick and needed to be quarantined, so she backed off and gave him some room, which is pretty much what anyone would do in that situation. By January 19th, the silence had gone on too long. She contacted the landlord, who went into the guest house to check on him, and inside, he found Adam unresponsive in bed. He was 39 years old. Near the mattress, police reportedly found vials, foil with a pill, lighters, and other paraphernalia that told its own sad story about those final, lonely days. Weeks later, the official cause came back from the Clark County coroner. Adam had died from fentanyl and methamphetamine toxicity, and the manner of death was ruled an accident. There was no foul play and no grand mystery. There was only the same enemy that had stalked him for nearly 20 years, finally catching up in a quiet room where no one could reach him in time. For a family that had lived through so many close calls and so many returns from the edge, this was the call they had always feared. The cruelest part was how ordinary it really was. No dramatic twist, no shocking secret tucked away in a vault. Just a young man, an accidental overdose, and a poison that has done the very same thing to hundreds of thousands of other families across the country. The timeline made the loss even harder to absorb. Only days earlier, Adam had been sending messages and going about his life, and within a short window, he was gone. The investigation into his death stayed open for a time while officials sorted through the details. For the family, those weeks of waiting for answers added a fresh layer of pain on top of the grief they were already carrying. Confirmation, when it finally came, only put an official stamp on what they had feared from the very start. But Rick already had a terrible feeling about what had happened, even before anyone confirmed a single word. A father's grief, made public. When the news reached Rick, he said he had a good idea of what it probably was. After all those years and all those close calls, a father learns to brace for the worst. The week that followed broke him in a way fame never could. He later admitted that when he was not screaming at a wall, he was crying his eyes out. There is no script for that kind of pain, and no amount of money or celebrity makes it hurt any less. Rick chose not to hide his heartbreak. The day after Adam died, he shared a photo of the two of them together and wrote that Adam would always be in his heart, signing off with a simple, "I love you, Adam." His son Corey, the brother who had grown up beside Adam, posted an old childhood picture of the two of them and called him Bubba, promising he would always love him. The grief was raw, and the family let the world see it. In the months that followed, Rick spoke openly about the hole his son left behind. He has said that he thinks about Adam every day, and he has wrestled out loud with the question that haunts every grieving parent. Could he have done more? Was there a call he missed? A single moment where a different choice might have changed everything? He had put Adam in rehab again and again, and still he questioned himself, because that is what love does when it has nowhere left to go. Rather than retreat into private mourning, Rick made a decision that surprised some people. He turned his grief outward and pointed it straight at the thing that had unalived his son. If he could not save Adam, then he would try to keep other parents from ever getting the same phone call. The outpouring stretched well beyond the family circle. Messages of sympathy poured in from fans who had welcomed the Harrisons into their living rooms for years, and even public figures sent their condolences online. For a son who had spent his life out of the spotlight, the attention carried a quiet kind of irony. In death, Adam was finally seen by the same audience that had never known he was there, and people who had only ever watched his father found themselves grieving right alongside him. So Rick took the worst week of his life and turned it into a public fight against the epidemic that had taken his boy. The crisis that took wax. Rick did not stay quiet about how his son died, and he did not dress it up. He went on the record blaming the fentanyl crisis directly, calling out leaders he believed were doing far too little while the drug poured across the border. He pointed out that a fentanyl pill can reportedly be bought for around $5, cheap enough for almost anyone to afford, and he argued that the country needs to make a fentanyl death rare rather than routine. He even met with former President Donald Trump to talk about it. Determined to turn his heartbreak into public pressure, the actual numbers behind this disaster are pretty brutal. Government health data shows that overdose casualties from synthetic opioids, like fentanyl, have completely skyrocketed over the last 10 years. In fact, the death rate lately is way higher than it was just a few years ago. It only takes 2 milligrams of the stuff, which is literally smaller than a single grain of salt, to kill a fully grown adult. Adam was just one face among hundreds of thousands of victims, and that is exactly why Rick refuses to let his son turn into another forgotten statistic. Here is the real truth that came out after Adam died, the one that actually caught fans off guard. There was no hidden vault, no secret treasure, and no movie-style plot twist locked away in a back room. The actual shock was just how ordinary the whole nightmare was. A famous family name and all the cash in the world could not protect a kid from a poison that does not care who his dad is. That is the part that should stop everyone cold. Substance overuse does not check your last name or your bank. Rick has said the lesson he carries now is to hold the people he loves a little closer while they are still here, to cherish his other children and his grandchildren, and to make sure that Adam's death means something more than grief alone. This is also why Rick keeps telling the story instead of burying it. Talking about a child's overdose in public is not easy, and many families choose silence out of shame or sheer exhaustion. Rick decided that silence helps no one. Every time he says Adam's name and explains how he died, he chips away at the stigma that keeps other parents from asking for help. If even one family hears the warning in time, then his son's story becomes a kind of rescue rather than only a tragedy. Because in the end, the most shocking discovery was not something they found in a room, but something every family watching already knows deep in their bones. So what really happened to Rick Harrison's son? What do you think the country should do about fentanyl? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.